So the last couple of meetings, I was talking about various things. Bob was trying to cut and paste some of the indexed videos either out of Slack or out of my text-based indexed file that I've got, and he was pasting them into his Miro viewer, and then he would have a clickable link he could get to. And I've been thinking for a long time, if I had a way to just convert my text-based index file over to an HTML file, that would be very beneficial all around, because then it would have clickable links. You can just pull it up as pull it up with your web browser. You don't have to go to the text file and then cut and paste stuff. And one of the biggest advantages is that putting it into an HTML file, now the search engines can find it, because somewhere it says the search engine will not search through a text-based file. So I've got that like three years worth of stuff. I think it's 3 years worth of stuff in my text-based index file, but the browsers just, or the search engine just ignore it. So now if I convert it to an HTML, that should be able to find it. And one of these days I'll have to go type in, probably when I pull up the file here, I'll pull up say if I go search for this name, it should find it. It should find both the YouTube video called that, and then it should find, if it's found this, it should pop up and say, oh, here's a HTML page that has that stuff in it. So I can get around, try that either. We might try it right now, or we could do it some other day, or I could do it some other day. So let's see, if we go look at share screen, this one, let's crap out of the way. If I pull up the text-based, so the original text-based file looked like this, where it just simply had, I went through and created all this by hand. So here's a separator, and then it's got the name that's on the YouTube video, and then the link to the YouTube video. And then just as I'd watch the video, I'd put down, we got a chat section, and there's an index section. And by putting the time at the front of each line, that automatically does a time and date stamp on YouTube. So if you pull up the video, those show up. You know, sometimes they call them chapters. I don't know what else they call them, but they're timestamps that actually show up on the YouTube video when you go look at it. And this is just simply, I create this file, this text file, and then I would cut and paste that into Slack, saying this was the info from this week's meeting, and I cut and paste that into the YouTube video, and then so that in the description of the video, it shows up. Let's see, should I pull one up here? I'll pull one up in a second here. We'll do it the easy way instead of cut and paste this. So anyway, just like 3 years worth of stuff typed in here for all the various meetings. And what was I going to say? So the point I was trying to make here, no, I won't make any points. So then the other thing that I wrote a converter program that will take this text-based file, and I wrote a Python program that opens it up and reads it and writes it back out as HTML. So that there's now an HTML page, and I will post the links for both of these in the chat. So they should show up on this index. They should show up, so you can tell where this is. And what it does, it just simply opens the file, reads it in a line at a time, and then basically puts that BR bracket at the end to make these lines of text into HTML links, or HTML format. And so it reads up a line, puts the BR on the end of it, and then it just keeps doing that all the way through. And then it says, if you find a link in there, so basically I searched the line for HTTP. I was searching for HTTPS, but not all of them have that. So I had to back it off HTTP. If it finds that, it just reads up, it strips out that much of the link. So we go back here. So this is the same. Yeah, this should be the same one right here. So it found an HTTPS, and I simply read that out, and then you have to write it back out twice. You write it out once just as raw text, and then you write it out again as in the link format, and then it magically converts it into links like this. So that's a good thing. So it really turned out it's not that hard to do it. It's just I had to figure out all the various details, how to how to how I wanted to do it. And then I was doing it in Python. I had to go fight with Python because that's not something I normally use. And so basically, as I say, you start with this and it converts it into this. And there's just a link. You can just point to it. It's out on my website. You just click on the link and this page will show up. And all these should be, let's see, it's like that screenshot. Let's see if this works. Oh, it's going to start up. It's going to start up everything. Anyway, let's don't do that. Let's say, find something a little more normal here. Here's GitHub's. This Juan's GitHub. Let's see what this does. So indeed, the links do work and point to whatever. So as long as the links haven't changed, because this is 3 years old, that stuff we're looking at here in the index. So this is somebody's GitHub that Juan mentioned in the chat section here. And for people that aren't familiar with this, when we run Zoom, we've got the chat window. You can type stuff in. So when we're all done, I just cut and paste that out of the chat section and put it into here, into this file. So let's see, anything else I want to mention about this? So then I was saying that the two things you have to do, you have to convert the line into an HTML line just by putting a break statement at the end of the line. And then I figured out how to get the identify a, let's find some examples here. Let's just go down here where I can more likely find examples like I want. So it turns out you have two formats. You either have it just starts off with the HTTP at the beginning of the line, or here it's actually out in the middle of the line. And then you have another case where, it's say here's real just normal text on the beginning and then a link, and then you can have more text afterwards. So that's just more things you have to play with in order to get that to work. And then here's a case where so this case, they start at the beginning of the line, and this does have text afterwards. So I just have like 3 different ways to, when I find a link, I have to convert it and just get it to print out right. And the other thing was, if we go back to the top here, that's on 423 was my example. Well, 423. The other problem is when you're trying to create an HTML page, is that if you have spaces at the beginning of the line, so here's what the text file looks like from 423. See, I've gone through various iterations how to do this, and I just simply say, okay, here's a timestamp, and then other things that happen underneath. I just simply use spaces to indent that, so you can tell that it's goes into that block. But the problem is HTML. If you have one space or 10 spaces, it always crunches that down into one space. So it just mashes all this together, and you lose the fact that I went to the trouble to indent it in the first place. So I just had in that same program, then I said, I read the lineup, I'd say count the number of spaces on the beginning of that line and keep that number. And when I go to print it out, I just have a loop that says put out that number of non-breaking spaces, which is just a clever little thing they've done in the browser to, instead of putting out a space character, you now have to say ampersand NBSP semicolon to represent a space. So it just puts out as many of those I want. And so looking right here, you can see that I have indented that stuff. And then we look at it in the final HTML, and you can see it's indented it here. It doesn't look like it indented quite as much, but I think it's because the spaces are different width, because once you get in the browser, now you got different fonts and various things going on. But anyway, I wrote the program that does this. So I just go in and say Python space convert or whatever I called it. And it just takes my text file and bam, it just dumps out the HTML file. So now each week when I go to my numerous steps to publish this stuff, that's just one more thing I have to do is once I create the text file, then say run the converter. And then I just copy both files up to my web page. So every week we should have an up-to-date version of that. So I guess there's not much more to say about that other than I did do that and it's working now. And hopefully I'll, just like before, hopefully once a week I'll keep the stuff updated and everybody should be happy on that. So let me see.
Where do you host that at, Jeff?
It's on GoDaddy, I think is what it is. And that's the thing where I had a big surprise where I set up to do automatic payments, and they started about 3 months early. Oh, your stuff's about to expire, but fortunately you set it for auto payments. Okay, fine, so I don't have to worry about it. I wasn't really paying attention when it popped up for the last time. I went and looked at it. It says, "Oh, just make a payment of $530." And I thought, what the heck? So I started looking at it. It turns out, well, that's number one, that's for 3 years. And I thought, well, I don't remember it being that much last time. Well, it went up like $50 a year or something, I think, from last year or something. And at that point, I I I had to I could have just said sign me up for 1 year, cut it back to 1 year instead of 3 years, and then gone and look for hosting somewhere else. But I thought, well, I'm too lazy to do that, so I just went ahead and paid my money. And so for another 3 years, I've got just web space out there that I do very little with. So I just simply
For 3 years for how much?
I was like 500 something for 3 years.
Wow.
So it's like 100 and what 180 or something. Whatever that comes out to be. It's it's over $100 per year to have the advantage of doing. Oh, I got multiple databases and all kinds of the tools that I don't use any of that crap. I just want somewhere to put a file and point to it, and somebody can go pull it up and look at it. So various things I put out there, and like this all indexing stuff. I've just got a directory out, that ROS Agriculture directory on my website, and it just simply has the files in there. So technically, I should be able to pull up the file I was doing for ROS Agriculture, which is a text-based file. It may work with this. I could just point to that and go, and then we'd have a HTML-based version of that. That again, number one, will show up. You can just open it with a browser. Number two, that you should have clickable links. Number three, the search engine should find that. So that would be something I should look at some days and try to fix that. One more thing that I did was, see, if you look at I should still be sharing. So I had these separators between the blocks here. Since it's all text, it was nice to have something in. So at between each one, I just had that thing stuck in. And I kept thinking, well, it'd be nice if the title would show up either in bold or as a header or something. And let's see, I closed that, didn't I? So let's go back to.
And now you think the search engines will find it?
They should be able to find it, yeah. And so I wanted the titles to show up. So here, what I did was I took I took this big long thing and just cut that down to six equal signs just as a marker, and then I deleted the blank line. So in my code, when I go through, if I pull up a line and it's the six lines, it just sets a flag saying the next line should be a header line. So then when I read up the next line and go to publish it, which just occurred to me, this probably, yeah. So this one, there was the header line, and here's the link, and let's see what the modern ones do. I guess they're still separate. I simply put on the thing that says this video and then put the link, and then here's the header, and then I started adding the length on the end of them. So I guess they're still working the same way. So the point was, when it searches through the file and it comes along and finds the well, that's not what those should look like. So it looks like I've got a problem here somewhere. I probably just need to copy it back up. Anyway, so anyway, that's something else I did. I made the title show up, and that's a header too in HTML terms is what that is. And technically, I could build an index of the index. So up front, it would say, have the whole list of these things, which don't really do you any good other than it tells you the time and date. But then I could make those clickable, and it would take you to this point in the page. But that's more stuff that I'm not really looking to do at this point. And since it is an HTML page, theoretically, I could put images in here, but I don't really care at this point. So again, this is something light years beyond what we just had last week. So that's pretty much all I got to say about that, I guess.
Looks very cool. Thanks for spending time on that.
It's something I wanted to do. It's something I wanted to do from day one. I kept thinking, well, I don't know how to do that, and I don't care. Um, so I just kept putting it off. And then I saw what Bob was doing. He was going to a lot of work to by hand cut and paste all this stuff. And I thought, I could probably make that work. So I started down the line. I thought, well, if I can find a piece of software, like on the Miro software, I think if I just paste raw text into that, it automatically converts the text into a link. And then I could cut it back out and put it somewhere. Or if I paste it into Slack, because all the stuff in Slack, let's see, how do I get Slack?
And then are you going to host the Slack HTML file that you created?
We'll get to that. So what was I lost my train of thought here. Gonna pull this up. I forgot what I was doing here. Oh, I wanted to pull up one of these. So if I say share this, where'd my share button go? It's hiding behind. Say share screen, the screen. So in Slack, what I do, I just simply take that the text file for, say, before the day's over, I'll create my new index file, and I'll just cut and paste this stuff for the meeting out. And when I paste it into this is be Slack, right? Yeah, when I paste it into Slack, it automatically converts the text into a link. So it was doing that all along. So that was a good thing. It's just that I didn't have the index file itself would show up like that. So I thought if I could find some software where I could just paste it in and it would automatically convert it, that would be a good thing. And I spent like an entire day trying to find something that would do that. And I finally gave up on that. And then I thought, well, after watching the results of it come up, where's that echo coming from? Now it quit. Okay. What was I saying? After looking at the output of this, like 5,000 times, running this stuff again and again, playing with this stuff, I thought, I should be able to just do that manually. And that's those steps I was saying earlier that, I just have a Python program that reads it up, converts the lines to HTML, converts the links and whatever. So it turns out it's not really that hard to do, but trying to figure out all the cute little things of Python to separate lines and search and do all that kind of stuff was the biggest issue on that. So basically I got it down to the point now. I've just got a program that runs and puts out that HTML stuff. So I'll just have to decide where I want to. This will be the first time I go through and cut and paste and try to get this stuff to come out correctly. So I think that's all I got to say about that. So let's stop sharing there. And let me go to my other computer. And the other thing that we were talking about was trying to get the oh, this meeting's being recorded. Got it. Okay. So let's see. Look, I got to look at my two screens here and see what's going on. So, okay, this should work. So anyway, you can go into Slack, and if you're an administrator, I know Bob was asked twice about, do you have to be an administrator? And the first time I posted things says you have to be an administrator or an owner or be designated as a export guru or something. But as he just asked again, like yesterday, and basically the answer is still the same, that yes, you have to be one of those three things in order to be able to export it. But once you get the export, it's really ugly. It's got see, can I pull one up here? Go home, Slack. What am I doing? Oh, they're all compressed files. So open it this way. So when you do an export, it creates a zip file. It's got this in it. So this where it says random, that's one of the channels. If The big one has all 4 channels. It's got general and RTK and common ECU and random. So all those have separate directories. And then here's the thing, it says users. And this stuff's really cryptic. If you go look at this, can I open that with, just say open. So the whole thing looks like this. It's just a big mess of all kinds of junk. And if you've got enough time, you can go through and figure all that stuff out. And let's back up to here. So we go look at the random directory, and inside of there, this only has one message. If you go to the big one, for any day that a message was posted, you get a separate file. So this is the file from 10/27. And if I open that, then it looks like this. So starting right here is the beginning of a message, and then it says the type is a message, and here's some text in it, and here's another copy of the text, and so it's got some really ugly stuff going on here. So then down here, I think this is where the second message starts. So there's 2 messages in this stuff. And if you had enough patience, you could go through and extract this out to do something with it. And I did some searching and found a GitHub where somebody has written software to crunch this stuff and make it work. So let me say, how do I get out? I don't need any of that. I don't need that anymore. Don't need that anymore. So if you just install this guy's software and run it, with any luck, boom, there it is. So we got a page that looks just like Slack. And it's got over here, it's got your channels listed. And right now he's got it so it automatically defaults, comes up with the general channel. So but the one I just showed that only had the random channel, I think that one crashes if you try to bring it up. But then if you go in and manually go into the title here, see when I switch to a different channel, see the link up here it says channel/RTK for the channel, or I can go to this channel and it says channel common ECU. So 3 of the channels work. So if I go back to the general channel here, and it says the first message is on like January 29th of 2021. And I think that's the first day we started doing this, because it said that's when I was added to the channel. I remember sitting on Zoom with Al saying, well, we could put this in Slack. And he said, I've got a Slack channel kicking around and never done anything with. And apparently he created that in January 23rd of 2018, because that's where it says he was added to it. And then on this day, it added me. And then Juan also got added that first day, I think. Yeah. So while we're sitting there talking about this, and Al fired up his Slack channel, I said, well, maybe it want to be interested. So we sent him an email, and he quickly replied, said, sure, add me on. So the very first day we added all this junk in here. And then here's this, I believe, became a pinned message, a bunch of links that Al had posted. So anyway, this is the channel, and see, you can just scroll up and down. It turns out this actually built a web page. So there's a web page for general, one for hey, I should go. I was gonna say I should go look, see if there's a page for random. It could be it builds the page, and if I look far enough, I could get to it. But what happens is, oh, another thing to note here while I'm scrolling through, see, it's got all the images too from the original web page. And buried in those JSON files are links out to the video, or out to the images. So it probably will point to files and images and videos. I guess I haven't played with that hard enough to know. But when I try to switch to the random channel, boom, it crashes. It says internal server error. And then you look over here, there's like 20 or 30 lines of stuff saying, nope, doesn't work. So there's something wrong with it, and I gotta either track that down or give up on it. But somehow it doesn't like this channel, but the other channels work. And it's not crashed completely, because if I say back, it goes back to where we just were. So it's very encouraging that the stuff, it seems to work great, but it doesn't display the channel that I want the most, which is the random channel. So that's something that I've played with, and it seems like the software is real touchy, because somewhere I loaded it up under I tried to load it under 1604, and that just failed miserably. It couldn't even get the pip install stuff to work there. I thought, well, I should try it on my computer downstairs. So I came down, and this one's got 2004, and I was able to install the software, but when I went and run it, it would fail with some cryptic message. And I went look at the issues on the GitHub, and it says, oh, by the way, uh, you have to downgrade two of the modules to version 2.0 instead of they were like 2.1.3 or something. And it says if you downgrade those, it'll work. So I did that. I went to the command line and said pip install and gave it the name of the module and the older version. So I downgraded both of those and fired up, and I got this is what I've got right now. It comes up and does indeed run, except the random channel doesn't work. So then I had another hard drive lying around. I had an external solid state drive in a box, and it's got 2204 loaded on it. So I plugged that one in, and when I went to load up this guy's software, it's in some of the messages says, oh, everything loaded, but you will have version, it says version 8.1.3 of click is required, but you're going to have version 7.0 when we're all done here. And sure enough, it's got it seems like it should have said, oh, this is not going to work, and go ahead and loaded the newer stuff, but it didn't. It just told me there's a problem. So I manually went in and pulled up the right version of that, installed the correct version of that. And I think it runs the same way on the newer version. And it, again, display general, but it won't display random. So I thought maybe it's the operating system version, but that doesn't seem to be it. So I think it's just dependency problems where there's at least one more module that nobody's discovered yet that you have to have a certain version of it to get it to work. And on the issue page, everybody said, oh, well, all you got to do is just make sure it's less than version 3.0. Well, no, that's not true, because when I loaded, it was less than 3.0 and wouldn't run. So somebody's still missing the point there that something's not quite right here. Right? So anyway, the other thing is, when this runs, it actually builds this as a web page. So I'm looking at it with the browser here. If I just come here and say save as, say save as HTML. Yeah, so it's going to save the HTML. It will save the entire web page, and then you can just point to that with your computer or with your browser, and it'll open it. Just bypassing all the software, because the software just generates this page, and then theoretically, if you had all four of these pages generated, we could put it somewhere and then just access it direct like that. So Al's question a while back, he says, so are you going to host that somewhere, host the actual results? And I guess we could. I could just copy this HTML out to, say, the same place I'm putting everything else, and you can just click on it and then have access to that directly without having to do any extra screwing around. Now, the other problem is on Slack, when you do the export, you give it a range, or say, give me the entire thing. But if you come along, say, a week or a month later, and you want to get new stuff, there doesn't seem to be any way. I haven't seen any way to merge the new stuff with the old stuff, which means I suppose what you do is you can just back this up like once a month, and then just have separate files stored that says this is the month of whatever year, and you could open it that way. So it's not the optimum way to do it, but that would be that's light years beyond not having the stuff at all. So that would be maybe a reasonable way to do it. So anyway, that's something else I've been working on, and I don't know how much farther we'll get with it, but that's where that's at.
I mean, what you presented first is really, really useful. That I think the Slack thing would be useful too. It's probably the user interface is just a little bit more Slack-like, but both of them are good. Thanks for spending time on it.
Well, when you say both of them are good, well, the only thing you have to run this, you have to run that software to decode all the Slack exports. So that's just what you get right there. And because otherwise you're gonna have to dig through mountains of JSON files that make absolutely no sense and merge all this crap together. And these people figured out how to do that. So it's if I could figure out what that last bug is to get it to display the random channel, then it would be all set. And that's just the way it's going to display it. It shows up as an HTML page, and you scroll through and click links, and everything should work. Once you save this, say, to your hard drive and open it with a browser, if you try to switch channels, it says, "Oh, I can't find whatever said in the title. That something 5,000 /channel/RTK." It says it can't find that, and so if you wanted to use this a little better, then once you get that file created, you can search through, and anywhere it says the channel 5,000 is like a port 5,000 is what it's trying to talk to. Just simply replace that with whatever the link is on your wherever it's stored. And that then I think you could just seamlessly go between pages at that point, assuming we can get this worked out and get it to work.
Cool.
So I think that's I was gonna say that's all I've done this week.
It's a lot.
I haven't done anything with my robot, so I got no more progress there to talk about.
Well, on my side, where's the share button? Just a couple of things to talk about. Excuse me, I've run a few more tests and in the field, so to speak, and one of the things I noticed is I wanted a way to, well, probably started with I closed my lid on my laptop, and I wanted to just make sure that the temperature wasn't, freaking out when I did that. And so I started a process to write a little utility program to pull some data off the laptop and just put it into a text file that sort of expanded into capturing a number of different elements. So at the moment, I've got this utility program that reports the CPU utilization, which was always something I was curious about. Running ROS on this older laptop, but it had 16 gigabytes of memory. So I've got that. I've got how much memory is there, used and available. I said, well, even though I don't necessarily have Wi-Fi in the spot that I'm at, capture the SSID and the signal strength that it's at. There's a couple of temperature values that you can pull. And I said, what the heck, I'll add disk space in there as well. So, and then finally I noticed that it's running on battery when it's plugged in, well, when it's on the tractor and out in the field. I don't have any input, and so I can monitor the battery of the laptop. And not exactly sure what this current value is yet, but when I think what it is when it's not on AC power, it's displaying the draw on the battery. But then when you plug it back in, that current goes up. So if it's drawing 1.2 current, 1.2 amps, when it's not plugged into the AC, plug it into the AC, that'll then pump up to, I'll say 3 or 4 amps. So I think it's the combined amps running, must be the combined amps running through the BMS on the laptop. So anyway, that's been a little bit interesting and useful, and that's out on GitHub now. I've got my, oh yeah, I guess I should talk about what a pain in the ass that was. I got updating my GitHub back up, so this is current as of today. Let's see, what else do I want to talk about? Building an outer perimeter. So I mean, I was previously just running out in the yard, and I just picked 2 spots and drove around, and I knew that those were useful, and it was all about testing, testing the steering. And not that I'm complete with testing, but now I wanted to actually prepare to do something useful. And so getting so this is the picture of the actual yard that I'm, testing at the moment. And where I'm at the moment is I've driven 2 paths around the yard. It's a little bit purplish blue. There's a purplish blue line there, and there's a red line. Drove, effectively a similar path twice. And what you're looking at is, a visual of what that looks like. So my next step is sort of like, well, we're going to call that blue because that's the way it's supposed to be, but just a few issues with the blue. There's this gap over here. I had driven more than, let's call this this big circle, the main plot that I want to cut. And so I had gone off path, so to speak, at that point. Here, I think I was being a little bit more precise when I ran the red line, and so I want to sort of pull that up. And I had driven through these trees and out into the front yard, and I'm just going to trim that off. That's what that's all about. And similar with this, I had driven up into this segment, and I want to trim that off. These green circles represent a couple of obstacles. You can't really tell it in the yard, but this ground is sloping from the house down to these woods, and there's a rather steep incline right in here, and just want to sort of drive around that for the time being. And then here there was something to do with the septic system that I don't want to bang into, that I need to drive around. So my next step is to try to take these 2 ROS files that have captured not only the lat long, obviously, but also the X and Y coordinates, and merge those together to come up with X and Y coordinates. So I started looking at another guy who's built an autonomous robot. He wrote some code that it's at precisionmule.com that lets you just use the GPS or use Google Map and sort of pick plots, and you create a polygon, and it was designed for Pixhawk. So number one, it's lat lawn based, and his path is meant for something like a 0 turn where it just goes back and forth. And at the moment I'm just trying to create a perimeter. So anyway, interesting website, and but I tried to use that in Google Maps to go drive a path, and it immediately, it all worked except the Google Map hadn't been updated, I think, enough, and when I got up to this point here, I couldn't go any further, either because the map was off a little bit or because there was some stuff from his yard that was there. So Google Map is nice, and it sort of gives you a frame of reference, but I've got the mindset that if you really want to create a accurate perimeter map, you're going to have to drive it. But hats off to, I think his first name is Wayne, for creating this, because it's really a useful tool just to sort of get your head around it. And so my process for trying to build a map is drive it twice, compare the two. I'm going to put them into a CSV file and basically cut and paste, down at a low level, those files. So, what that, let's see if I still have the file handy. There's nothing fancy about the file. It's the timestamp and the lat long, and so I have plot juggler up and find the point or the timestamp that represents where I want to start and stop, and cut and paste these into a file, and then put those back out to another file, convert them to X and Y, and I'll have my outer perimeter. So that's, let's see, and on the GitHub thing, what I screwed up was, at one point I ended up with a let's see, I'm trying to get back to something. I ended up with a bag file inside of on my laptop, inside my repository. And then when I tried to upload, the repository, I just do a full push. And yeah, that's screwed up, because GitHub said we're not letting you update a gigabyte worth of data or something like that. And so that really screwed things up. And then I had to go back and clean out. There's a process I thought I had captured some of the commands over here, but I have it documented someplace. Where I had to delete the file, obviously, out of my repository, and then you've got to go into the logs, the GitHub logs, and clean them out of the commits, so it's not looking like it wants to commit that. And you got to clean it out of the change log or something. So there's like 2 different logs that I had to clean it up, and then and only then could I push all my stuff back up. So that was let's just call it a learning experience. But I'm back up and running and making progress. I think that's all I've got for today. Other than, did I tell you that my cable on my base station, because I've moved that out to the other location, the cable on the base station failed. Like the coax cable failed. I took the cable off my tractor and plugged it into the GPS and the survey antenna on the base station, and it worked fine. So yeah, the guys who built that cable for me, evidently I need to ask for a weatherproof grade coax, because the one I had was obviously not. Wasn't didn't like to be outside and then moved around and plugged back in, and anyway, it worked good. I had a spare cable and I got back to work. That's it for me.